We all know marrying outside your culture and religion in this part of the country is frowned against. Here is a beautiful love story about Amina, a beautiful girl from the north, and Obinna, a strong and handsome boy from the east. Welcome to Tales by M. We bring you the best and the most interesting stories. Please subscribe, like, comment, and enjoy.
Amina's laughter rang out like a bell across the fields, carried by the warm breeze of the late afternoon. The golden light of the setting sun played in her eyes, making them shine like polished amber. Her long, flowing hijab fluttered around her as she ran through the rows of millet, her feet light on the soft earth. She was a vision of grace and beauty, her every movement like a dance with the wind. Amina was the pride of her village, admired by all for her beauty and kind heart. Her father, Al-Haji Suleiman, was a respected elder in their community, known for his wisdom and strict adherence to tradition. It was on one such day, as she wandered further than usual from her home, that she first met Obinna. Obinna was an Igbo boy, tall and strong, with a smile that could light up even the darkest of days. His family had recently moved to the outskirts of the village. His father, Mr. Okafor, was a trader, having come from the east to settle in the north for better opportunities, and they had come to this part of the country in hopes of expanding their business. The Igbo were known for their enterprise, and Mr. Okafor was no exception. On that fateful day, Amina had been picking wildflowers near a stream when she noticed Obinna on the other side, washing his face in the cool water. She had seen him around the village before, but this was the first time she had the chance to observe him closely. There was something about him, a quiet confidence that intrigued her. Obinna looked up and their eyes met. For a moment, neither of them moved, both caught off guard by the intensity of the connection they felt. Then, almost as if compelled by an unseen force, Obinna crossed the stream and stood before her. Assalamu alaikum, he greeted her, his voice deep and warm. Wa alaikum assalam, Amina replied, her voice barely a whisper. She felt her heart race, a sensation she had never experienced before. I'm Obinna, he said, extending his hand. Amina, she responded, hesitantly taking his hand. The touch sent a jolt through her, and she quickly withdrew her hand, her cheeks flushing. Do you often come here? Obinna asked, breaking the silence. Sometimes, Amina replied, her voice steadying. It's a peaceful place. I come here to think. I see, Obinna said, nodding. It's beautiful, like you. Thank you, she said, lowering her gaze, unsure of how to respond. Obinna smiled, sensing her discomfort. I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable. I couldn't help but notice how beautiful you are. Amina looked up at him, her eyes meeting his once more. There was sincerity in his eyes, and something else. Something that made her feel both excited and nervous at the same time. It's okay, she said softly, her lips curling into a shy smile. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the fields, they reluctantly said their goodbyes, promising to meet again. From that day on, Amina and Obinna found excuses to meet by the stream, to talk and laugh and share their dreams. Their meetings became the highlight of their days, a secret world where they could be themselves, away from the expectations and restrictions of their families and communities. But as their bond grew stronger, so did the dangers that surrounded it. In their world, a relationship between a Hausa girl and an Igbo boy was not just frowned upon, it was forbidden. Their families, steeped in tradition and cultural pride, would never approve of such a union. Yet, despite the risks, Amina and Obinna couldn't stay away from each other. They were drawn together by a force stronger than them, a love that defied logic and reason, a love that was as beautiful as it was dangerous. The more time Amina and Obinna spent together, the more they realized how much they meant to each other. Their secret meetings by the stream became more frequent, their conversations deeper. They talked about everything: life, love, faith, and the future. They shared their fears and their hopes, and with each passing day, they fell deeper in love. Amina knew that what they were doing was risky. She knew that if anyone found out, the consequences would be severe. But she couldn't help herself. Obinna made her feel alive in a way she had never felt before. With him, she could be herself, free from the constraints of her family's expectations. Obinna, too, was acutely aware of the risks. He knew that if his family found out about his relationship with Amina, they would be furious. The Igbo and Hausa communities had a long history of tension and mistrust, and a relationship between members of the two groups was seen as a betrayal of one's culture and heritage. But Obinna couldn't bring himself to walk away from Amina. She was everything he had ever wanted in a partner: kind, intelligent, and beautiful. He loved her, and he was willing to risk everything to be with her. One day, as they sat by the stream, Obinna took Amina's hand in his. "Amina, I know what we're doing is dangerous, but I can't imagine my life without you. I love you." Amina's heart swelled with emotion. "I love you too, Obinna, but what are we going to do? Our families will never accept us." "I don't know," Obinna admitted, his voice filled with worry. "But I do know that I don't want to lose you. We'll find a way to make this work somehow." Amina nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. She wanted to believe him, to believe that their love could overcome the obstacles in their way. But deep down, she knew that their situation was complicated, that their love would face many challenges. As their relationship grew more serious, Amina and Obinna became more careful about their meetings. They knew that they couldn't keep their secret forever, but they wanted to enjoy their time together for as long as they could. However, the village was small, and it wasn't long before rumors started to spread. People began to notice the way Amina and Obinna looked at each other, the way they always seemed to disappear around the same time. Whispers of their forbidden love circulated, and it wasn't long before their families heard about it. One evening, as Amina returned home from one of her secret meetings with Obinna, she found her father waiting for her, his face etched with anger. "Amina, where have you been?" Al-Haji Suleiman demanded, his voice trembling with fury. "I was just out for a walk," Amina stammered, her heart racing. She knew she was in trouble. "Don't lie to me, Amina," her father roared. "I've heard the rumors. They say you're meeting with that Igbo boy, Obinna. Is it true? Answer me," her father shouted, his voice echoing through the house. "Yes, it's true," Amina whispered, her voice barely audible. Her father's face turned red with rage. "Do you know what people will say? How could you do this, Amina? How could you disgrace our family like this? Do you know the shame you have brought upon us?" Amina's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, Baba. I didn't mean to hurt you, but I love him." "Love," her father spat, his voice filled with contempt. "What do you know about love? This is not love, Amina. This is a betrayal of everything we stand for, everything our family believes in. You will end like this. You will end this nonsense with that boy immediately." Amina's heart sank at her father's words. She had known this moment would come, but that didn't make it any less painful. The thought of never seeing Obinna again was unbearable, but she knew that defying her father's wishes would bring even greater consequences. "Baba, please," she began, her voice trembling with emotion. "Obinna is a good person. He respects me, he cares for me. Can't you at least meet him and see for yourself?" Her father's face hardened. "Amina, there is nothing to discuss. An Igbo boy? How could you even consider such a thing? We are Hausa, and we do not mix with those who do not share our customs, our religion, our way of life. This conversation is over. You will end it with him, and that is final." With that, Al-Haji Suleiman turned and walked away, leaving Amina standing there, tears streaming down her face. She felt as if her world was collapsing around her. The love she had found with Obinna, something so pure and beautiful, was now the source of her deepest pain. On the other side of the village, Obinna was facing his own storm. His younger brother, Shibuz, had overheard some men in the market talking about Obinna's relationship with a Hausa girl. Word had spread quickly, and it wasn't long before the news reached Mr. Okafor. "Obinna, come here." His father's voice boomed through their small home. Obinna entered the room, already knowing what was coming. His father stood in the center, his arms crossed, his expression a mixture of anger and disappointment. "I've heard some very troubling things, Obinna. Things that, frankly, I cannot believe. Is it true that you have been seeing a Hausa girl? Obinna felt a pang of guilt but stood tall, determined to defend his love. Yes, Papa, it's true. Her name is Amina, and I love her. Mr. Okafor's eyes widened in disbelief. Have you lost your mind, boy? A Hausa girl? Do you know what you are doing? Our people have different ways, different beliefs. You think you can just ignore all of that? Papa, I know it's not what you want to hear, but Amina and I, we understand each other. We share the same dreams. She makes me happy. Mr. Okafor shook his head, his face contorted with frustration. Happiness? And what about your family? What about your community? This is not just about you, Obinna. You have responsibilities, traditions to uphold. This infatuation will bring nothing but trouble. You will end it, and you will do it now. Obinna felt a deep sadness settle in his chest. He had anticipated his father's reaction, but hearing the harsh words still hurt. He wanted to argue, to plead his case, but he knew it would be useless. His father was a man of strong convictions, and nothing Obinna said would change his mind. Papa, he said quietly, I love her. I don't want to end it. Mr. Okafor's expression softened slightly, but his tone remained firm. Obinna, sometimes love is not enough. You must think of the future, of the challenges you will face. This cannot continue. You must respect our traditions, and you must respect your family. End it. Obinna left the room feeling defeated. He had always looked up to his father, always sought his approval. But now, for the first time in his life, he felt torn between his love for Amina and his duty to his family. Despite the pressure from their families, Amina and Obinna couldn't bear to part ways. They continued to meet in secret, stealing moments together whenever they could. Each time they met, their bond grew stronger, but so did the weight of the reality they were facing. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the village, Amina and Obinna met by the stream. The air was thick with the scent of blooming flowers, and the sound of the water rushing over the rocks filled the silence between them. Amina, Obinna began, his voice heavy with emotion. I don't know how much longer we can keep doing this. Our families, they'll never accept us. Amina looked at him, her eyes filled with sorrow. I know, she whispered, but I can't imagine my life without you, Obinna. What are we going to do? Obinna took her hands in his, holding them tightly. I've been thinking, maybe we could leave, start a new life somewhere else, where no one knows us, where we can be together without anyone telling us it's wrong. Amina's heart skipped a beat at the thought. The idea of running away with Obinna, of escaping the pain and conflict that surrounded them, was tempting, but it also scared her. Leaving her family, her home, everything she had ever known. It was a decision that weighed heavily on her. Obinna, she said, her voice trembling, I don't know if I can do that. My family, they need me. I can't just leave them behind. Obinna sighed, his shoulders slumping with defeat. I know, I'm sorry, Amina. I don't know what else to do. I love you so much, and the thought of losing you is more than I can bear. Amina leaned into him, resting her head on his chest. I love you too, Obinna. We'll find a way somehow. We have to believe that love will find a way. As they stood there, holding each other close, they knew that their love was both their greatest strength and their greatest weakness. It had brought them so much joy, but it had also brought them pain and heartache. And yet, despite everything, they couldn't let go. The inevitable finally happened on a hot afternoon when Amina's and Obinna's families crossed paths at the market. Tensions that had been simmering below the surface for weeks finally boiled over. Al-Haji Suleiman spotted Mr. Okafor talking to a vendor and immediately approached him, his face flushed with anger. Your son has been leading my daughter astray, he accused, his voice loud enough to draw the attention of the nearby shoppers. Mr. Okafor's face darkened. My son, your daughter is just as much to blame. They've both been reckless, disregarding our traditions. The two men stood there, their tempers flaring. As a crowd began to gather around them, words were exchanged, sharp and heated. as the villagers watched with bated breath. "This is why we do not mix with your kind," Al-Haji Suleiman shouted, his voice laced with contempt. "You have no respect for our ways, for our people. And what of your daughter?" Mr. Okafor retorted, his voice rising in anger. "She is no better. She has brought shame to both our families." The argument escalated quickly, with each man refusing to back down. The villagers murmured among themselves, some siding with Al-Haji Suleiman, others with Mr. Okafor. The tension in the air was palpable, thick with the weight of years of unspoken animosity between the two communities. Amina, who had been nearby, rushed to the scene when she heard the commotion. Her heart pounded in her chest as she saw her father and Obinna's father standing nose to nose, their faces twisted with anger. She cried, pushing through the crowd to reach her father. "Baba, please. This isn't the way. Please, let's talk about this calmly." Her father turned to her, his eyes blazing. "Talk? What is there to talk about, Amina? You have disgraced our family. And now this man," he pointed accusingly at Mr. Okafor, "is trying to shift the blame onto you. This madness ends now." Obinna arrived moments later, his heart sinking at the sight of the confrontation. He pushed his way through the crowd and stood beside Amina, his face set with determination. "Papa, please," Obinna said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Amina and I love each other. We never meant to cause any harm." Mr. Okafor's eyes flashed with anger. "Love? This is not love, Obinna. This is foolishness. You have brought nothing but trouble to our family with this so-called love." The crowd around them grew larger, the murmur of voices rising as the villagers watched the unfolding drama. Some whispered words of sympathy for the young couple, while others muttered disapproval. Seeing no resolution in sight, the village elders, who had been drawn to the scene by the commotion, stepped in to defuse the situation. The eldest among them, Malam Dan Ladi, raised his hands to quiet the crowd.